Dear listener, we want to thank God once again for giving us this opportunity to come and share His word with you, to talk about the things that really touch our lives, not just as women, but as people in general. So, today's topic is quite sensitive, but it's something that we need to be having a conversation around. These are things that we need to be discussing. You know, we were raised in a way that certain things you never talk about because they would say you don't hang your dirty laundry to the public. But then you find that these things, then they weigh you down as an individual, and you grow up carrying that burden in your heart because you cannot talk to or share it with anybody, and you can't even get counseling because you cannot talk about it. So we at God Sees You, we discuss those things. We talk about, we have those kind of conversations. So to me, I have a wonderful guest with me today. I'd like her to introduce herself.
Hello, everyone. My name is Sam Mnisi, a minister of the gospel, and it's so wonderful to be here with you this evening.
Thank you so much, Sam. Thank you so much for taking our time. So before we get into our topic for today, Sam, I just want us to tell our dear listeners about the retreat that we're going to be having in October, the 26th, the weekend of the 26th. So, you know, with this ministry touching on issues that really affect the hearts, the mind, the soul, we felt like it was time for us to kind of like gather women together in one place for a weekend. Because when you read John chapter 5, Jesus finds this man sitting by the pool, lying by the pool of Bethsaida. The Bible says he had been sick for 38 years, which means that he was not born like that. He was not born with that infirmity. So the Bible talks about infirmity, that he had infirmity for 38 years. Now, when you look up the word infirmity, it basically means it's a state of a poor or deteriorated vitality, which means you no longer have the strength to do certain things. You no longer have the strength to love, which is the topic we are going to be talking about, how abuse affects a person. You have a weak mind, you have a weak will, you have a weak character because of the things that have happened to you. So basically, infirmity is a state of a mind that then manifests itself physically. So you find that maybe it will manifest physically through sicknesses, or in extreme cases where you find that the individual, maybe there's a certain paralysis that happens in their body because of stroke and things like that. So yeah, we just want to invite you, our dear listener, to the retreat. It's 650 only at Malangeni. So we're going to be camping for the weekend. It's an inner healing. So Jesus says to this man, pick up your bed and walk. You know, he started explaining. Jesus asked him, do you want to be well? So he started explaining, this one rejects me. This one. No, Jesus is not interested in what has happened to you. Let's put that aside. But now it's time for you to take up your bed and walk, because you have been in that state. You have been grieving for too long. You have been in depression for too long. You have been in discouragement for too long. It's time for you to pick up your bed and walk. So imagine that the things this man could have achieved in the 38 years that he was just lying in that one state, that life had put him there, or maybe people have put him there, but then he was there for 38 years. So we just want to invite you. So do register with us. You can send us a message on 79494-960, or send us an email at godseesyou@gmail.com. So yeah, thank you so much, Sam. So today's topic.
Yes.
Today's topic,
yes.
We are laughing about it, but it's not a laughing matter. No, it's not. Definitely not a laughing matter. We're talking about sexual abuse.
Yes, we are.
Yeah.
Yes, we are.
I mean, at least now with the time that we are living in, people, women and young girls, even guys as well, they are encouraged to kind of like talk about it and discuss it and report. But our generation, it wasn't the case. It wasn't the case. And we have, grown up with that thing. I'll call it a thing, carrying it in our hearts, in our minds. And it really affects a person. It really affects a person. So now, how would you define sexual abuse?
Okay, before I come to the definition, I would like to ask you, Zetu, an interesting question. So if I were to say there's a big elephant in this room, now, and you know, its neck is so long and it's just taking up so much space. Tell me, would you be able to ignore it?
No, definitely not.
You would not be able to ignore an elephant in the room. So
Okay.
an elephant in the room is an idiom. It's a saying where it's talking about there's a difficult situation or a problem.
Okay.
That obviously it's there. Obviously people can see it, but they ignore it.
Yeah, hey.
It's ignored, and this is sexual assault, sexual abuse, rape. This is the elephant in the room.
Okay.
And it's now time for us to talk about this,
Yeah.
to cover this, especially in the church, because our Father cares about his daughters
Yeah.
and his sons. He
Yes.
cares about us, and he is very upset at what is happening.
Yeah.
1 in 3 women in this country are sexually assaulted. 1 in 3, that is too many.
That is too many.
That is
Especially
just
for
too
such a
many.
small country. That is a
Imagine.
lot.
No, the heart of our Father
Yeah.
is touched by this. And as Christians, it's high time that we spoke about this subject.
Yeah.
And in the Bible is not ashamed to talk about
Yes,
this.
it does. It does cover it.
I'd like to quickly just talk about, even 5 examples. First of all, in Genesis chapter 19, there's the story of Lot. Lot, in a certain instance, he says to some men, he just gives, he suggests to give his 2 daughters for them to be raped. Second instance, still in Genesis chapter 19, you find that Lot's daughters, his daughters, they have their father drink, and he's drunk.
Yeah.
They rape him, and then they have children by their father, and that's incest as well. Third instance, in Genesis chapter 34, we have the story of Dinah, who is raped by an influential man's son in the city.
Okay.
She was raped by somebody she knew. Fourth instance, Judges chapter 19. We have a Levite who is married, and they go on a vacation, and whilst they're in a certain city, some men come, and then he just volunteers his wife over to be gang raped by these men in the city.
Gosh, yeah.
Last example, we have Tamar and Amnon,
Ish.
2 Samuel chapter 13,
Yeah.
where her half-brother rapes her.
Yeah.
And that also is incest.
Yeah.
So don't tell me that the Bible doesn't mention these things.
Yeah.
And we have been silent too long.
Yeah.
It is time for us to speak about this.
Yeah.
And so you asked me about the definition of sexual abuse. This is when a child or adult is sexually exploited by an older, more powerful person for the satisfaction of the abuser's needs.
Okay.
So this is when one person has more power than the other when it comes to consent.
Yeah.
And the range of abuse can include verbal, visual, or physical sexual activity engaged in without the victim's consent.
Okay.
So consent is really important. Imagine a child can never consent.
A 2-year-old, an 11-year-old. Oh my goodness, this is sad. This is sad. You know, I like the way you've just related the different narratives in the Bible, because they are depicting the true picture that it's different characters that can sexually abuse, that can abuse an individual. Because you spoke about there's a one Dinah. It was
Yes.
that guy.
Yes.
Who basically pretend to love her and stuff like that, and wanted to marry her. Then there's the Amnon, your half brother.
Yes.
There's Lord, who's a father, who's a
Yes.
parent.
Exactly.
Basically giving away his daughters to be sexual. Then there's a husband. They are on vacation. He gives away his wife. So it's quite scary, Sam. It's quite scary because these are individuals. When you look at the scenario, maybe with an exception to 1 or 2, these are people that are supposed to be people that are protecting you.
Yes.
These are people that are supposed to be your pillar, people you go to when you are in trouble, when you have problems.
Yeah.
But then it is so sad when these very people end up being the one that molest you as an individual.
Very.
Yeah.
It is very.
Yeah,
very
yeah. So now let's talk about because like we are saying these are topics that we shun away from.
Yes.
We never want to be vulnerable. So I think the reason this ill in the society, it's really increasing and it's being aggravated. It's because we don't talk about it.
Yes.
So people sometimes, people feel they can get away with it.
Yes.
And in a sense, certain things, because when you were explaining the definition, you were speaking about verbal, as a form of sexual abuse. So maybe let's explain that briefly before we get into our stories. So basically, when a person is speaking all this perverted,
Yes.
sexual,
Yes.
that is abuse.
Yes. It is. It is. It violates you.
Yeah,
as a
because
woman.
then we are thinking it's normal.
Yes.
We ignore it as something that, normal. We take it as something that can be easily ignored. But yet it is violating you. Because it is defiling you in a way.
Yes.
When somebody is busy making suggestive comments, which without your consent.
Absolutely.
Because I like that, because that's the key part, my dear listener, that there must be consent
Absolutely.
for it not to be sexual abuse. So now, I want us to get into our stories because the picture that we have is that, like I was saying, that the reason that people are suffering in that experience they have been through, it's because nobody is talking about it.
Exactly.
And if we are talking about it, we are talking about it at a shallow level.
Yeah, exactly.
And especially if the perpetrator is a family member.
Yes.
It's like, no, don't hang our dirty laundry to the public. Don't report it. Don't. That's just so many cases. It's scary. 1 in 3 women.
1 in 3 women.
And those are reported cases.
To imagine is just horrifying.
Those
That
are
it's
reported.
even more.
How much more if we were to quantify, include the cases that have not been reported?
And the effects are so catastrophic
As
on not only you as the one who's the victim. What about society? Because it affects the way you interact with others,
Yeah.
even family members, friends,
Yeah.
co-workers,
Yeah.
children,
Yeah.
spouse. It just
Yeah.
goes on and on.
What's your story?
Well, my
Your
story.
experience, yeah.
Well, my story is my father's a Leswat, and my mother is half Zulu, half Xhosa. So I have all these tribes in me, which is fantastic.
Okay.
So when I was 5 years old, my parents took me with my second-born sister to live with my grandparents in South Africa.
Okay.
So we had that upbringing. Unfortunately, when they would come for holidays to visit us, and they would leave after a certain time, but then they would never tell us, okay, why are you leaving us here? I used to feel very rejected because I would miss my parents and want to live with them. So I didn't understand. So 9 years old, at times my parents would come and take us to come visit Eswatini to visit our grandparents.
Okay.
So when we were at Grand Gogo's farm, we used to meet people because people would hang around there and be working on the farm. So there would be different types of people, and older men were there. And so at 9 years old, I was sexually abused by a 14, 15-year-old.
Oh, my God.
And so in that, already with the definition of sexual abuse, I was a child and he was older. So there was no consent. And
Okay.
developmentally, as a 9-year-old, you don't know what's happening.
Yeah.
You're too young.
Yeah.
So there was no consent.
Okay.
And I remember 2 incidents. But then I guess I was in denial. I shoved it away.
Yeah. Okay.
Because many people
Do that.
tend to do
Yeah.
that. I minimized it and just shoved it away.
So you never told anybody about
No.
it? Yeah.
No, I never
Okay.
told anybody about it except one of my other cousins who was living with us. And I was too young, and I think I was too vague about what happened.
Okay.
So I never told anybody about that, and so kept on growing through the years until I was 13 years old.
Okay.
So when I was 13 years old is the time when my parents got us, me and my sister, from our
Okay.
grandparents to finally live together.
Okay.
And I finally thought, yes, we're going to be a family now.
Okay.
And so, but then as we moved in together, by this time my mother had other daughters. So there were 5 of us.
Okay.
Me as the oldest. And by this time, my mom was too busy. I mean, she had children, small kids to look after. And so I needed her attention, and I wasn't getting it. I needed love, affection, and attention, especially at 13. And I also needed the same thing from my father, which I really didn't get. The attention that I needed, that affirmation from my father. And so I began to be really, 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 really angry.
Yeah.
And those, and the body keeps the score. You might think you forgot what
Exactly.
happened.
No, the body doesn't. The mind doesn't.
I'm telling you.
It doesn't. It doesn't. And it's funny you should say that when you were 13, that's when you started manifesting the anger and the whatnot. Because when I was teaching young people, this is one of the things that the Lord kind of like gave me understanding of, that the reason teenagers, it's like they're rebellious. It's not that when they get to that certain age, maybe there are demons that start attacking them, then they become rebellious. It's a manifestation of the things that happened when they were young, as they were growing up. Because now body changes start happening with the hormones and all of that during that stage.
Exactly.
That is, so now these emotions, then they resurface. They've been there. Then they resurface. Then they don't know how to handle it. That's why then they are rebellious. They do all sorts of crazy things. They are seeking attention.
Absolutely.
They are just seeking attention. So that's the understanding the Lord gave me about teenagers, that all the things that they do, pay closer attention if you're a parent. Pay closer attention, because that child is crying out.
Yes.
That child is saying there is something that is bothering me. They may not even connect their behavior with that incident that happened when they were growing up.
Exactly.
They may not connect it, but the mind, like you were saying, the mind knows. So, it knows that what happened to me was not supposed to happen to me. So it was trauma. Trauma was involved and all of those things. So now it's reacting. So it's saying, hey, pay attention,
Absolutely.
So yeah, okay, continue with your story.
So from 13 to 16, just things were worse, because as I said, the body keeps the score, and it remembers.
It does.
And with my incidents, they were hazy. It's like my mind refused to go back and remember the memories, but I knew what had happened.
Yeah.
With so many of you, my sisters, I know that the memories, you can never shove those away. They come back.
Yeah, true.
And even through the physical effects is in the nighttime, nightmares,
Yeah.
and not being able to sleep, insomnia is a thing. And other physical effects that I went through were I began to eat a lot.
Okay.
I began to eat a lot to numb the feelings that would rise up. So I felt that when I ate, everything was just shoved really, 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 really down.
Yeah.
And not only that, I did not like my body at all. One of the effects of sexual abuse is you feel like your body is ugly.
Yeah.
You feel like your body humiliated you. It let you down.
Yeah.
So now you want to ignore it. You either ignore it or you punish it. Some people
Okay.
cut themselves.
Yeah.
Some women cut themselves. Some women have anorexia where they don't eat. Others bulimia where they eat too much. Me, it was disordered eating where I was just stuffing
Okay.
myself with food.
Yeah.
And you wouldn't believe it. I gained so much weight.
I can't imagine you.
I'm telling you, I was like so big
Wow.
because I was trying to hide.
Yeah.
I was trying to hide my body so that, nobody would bother me.
Yeah.
I think that's a lot of women I know that have tried to gain a lot of weight so that they hide themselves, or they don't take care of their bodies because it let them down. They punish it. You don't you don't listen to it. Like, I'm full, but you keep eating.
Okay.
Or I need to eat, but you starve it.
Okay.
So it was chaotic.
Yeah.
That time was really, 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 really chaotic for me.
Yeah. It's amazing, Sam, that you should mention that, because, okay, in my experience with sexual abuse, it happened when my mother had gone to school to study, to further her studies in England. So she left us with relatives. So it happened during that time, because I think she was gone for like a year. And I was still quite young. I must have been 3 or 4. But those memories, they stay with you. They never go away. So I think, like you are saying, as you grow up, you kind of like shelve it somewhere. Your in a sense, your conscious mind thinks it's been erased. It's no longer there. But obviously, when you get to your teenage stages, that's when it resurfaces as rebellion. So one thing I want us to talk about, Sam, it's that you have mentioned. It's the issue of low self-esteem, because what abuse will do, because it carries a certain spirit. There's a certain spirit behind it, because what it would do, it creates this self-hate. That's why you find that, like you were saying, that people cut themselves. You hate your body. You hate the way you look. Somehow the enemy is able to use that experience to manipulate the way you see yourself, because you don't see the beauty that God says you are. You don't see the beauty that God has created in you. Instead, you start seeing yourself through the experience that you went through, because I guess subconsciously it's like, why did it happen to me? Why was I the one that was violated? We are not saying the other person should be violated. So for me, I think my struggle, I had a great struggle with self-esteem. I had a very great struggle. So I became an introvert. I kept to myself. I remember there was a time where I think I was in Form 1, where I was suicidal. I didn't know, because then I was in my 13s. I was just starting my teens.
Yes.
So because I could not connect what I was feeling with the experience that I had as a child. So I didn't understand these emotions of depression and heaviness, and it's just so morbid.
Yes,
the way your
it is.
mind is, it's just so morbid, because it's like you are in this pit. You want to come out, but you don't know how,
Exactly.
So I was really, really suicidal, because I was like, you know what, I think it would be better off for everybody if I can
Yes.
just take my life. If you can, I remember I took, there used to be these tablets, the purple ones, cold and flu. I think they were cold and flu. They don't sell them anymore, because they were quite strong. So I took like a pack of those. So I knew that I don't want to do something that's going to cut my intestines, or, at least this is just going to make me go to sleep and I'm not going to wake up. That was my thinking. So I took those, and by the grace of God, by the goodness of God, the only thing that happened was I was drowsy for the whole week. My voice cracked, and that was the only thing because it was a lot. Like, I took a full pack, I think about 30 or so. So, but by the grace of God, he delivered me, he saved me from that. So what we are trying to say, my dear listener, is that if you can look back at your life and you can tick these areas, the things that we are talking about, some of the things that we are talking about,
Exactly.
then you need help. You need to heal. You need to come out of that, because it doesn't end at your teenage stage. You carry it for the rest of your life if you don't deal with it.
Yes, you do.
Yeah.
You carry it. And I would like to also mention something that many of us notice out there is many females who look like boys. They dress like boys.
Yeah.
That could be from sexual abuse too,
Yeah.
because I experienced. You then begin to have a hatred for your gender
Yeah, okay.
because of what happened to you.
Yeah.
Because then you feel like, okay, maybe it's better to be a man.
Yeah.
Because then I would be able to, protect myself. I would have been able to. Why did God make me a female?
Okay.
So that I would be hurt like this. You begin to hate your gender and want to be the opposite of what you are. And that's and in interacting with some some young women, that's what I have realized, that it's one of those things could be because they were sexually abused. And the thing is, when you are sexually abused too, it's you lose your voice, because maybe you said no to this person and they didn't listen to you, they ignored you and abused you anyway. So then you learn, okay, nobody's going to listen to me when I say something. I remember this incident when I was in university. Some guy, like in the taxi rank, he came, I was with my friends, we were going somewhere, and then he came and put his arm around me. I didn't want this guy's arm around me, but I was silenced.
Yeah, you became numb.
I couldn't say anything. I couldn't say, get your hand off of me.
Yeah.
I was frozen.
Yeah.
And it's those kinds of things, because your voice is taken away from you. You have no agency over your own body.
Yeah. It's basically you lose control of yourself. You lose control of your faculties, basically, because it's like something else takes over. This thing is so horrible. It's so horrible, Sam, because it's like it erases the purity that God put in you when He created you. You know, it strips you naked in public. It shames you.
Yes,
you know, it shames you. And if you have nobody to talk to, imagine carrying that all your life. Maybe you're in your 40s, maybe you're in your 50s, and you have never addressed that. Because another thing that sexual abuse would develop, the disorders that it will develop in your life, it's the trust issue. Many sexually abused people or abused people, they have a problem with trust issues. So you find that a person gets into marriage, they are so insecure because of that thing that happened to them. You find that maybe you are still in your early 20s. You are pushing away every guy that comes your way because of that experience you had. Because now somehow you feel like, because you don't love yourself, you don't believe that somebody else is capable of loving you. You know, the way you should be loved. Because you cannot receive love if you cannot love yourself. You have to start by loving yourself, appreciating who you are, accepting and embracing and seeing the goodness that God has created in you. So now, how has been your healing journey?
My healing journey began when, 16 all the way through, still I was in denial and having all these terrible effects still. And then, by the time I was in my 20s, I received Christ, which was absolutely beautiful in university. And then in 2009, though, after I had been a Christian, I still experienced the same effects. You know, in 2 Corinthians 5, verse 17, it says, you know, if we're in Christ, we're a new creation. The old is gone, the new has come. Well, the new had not come. I still felt really bad. And so, but then God told me, Sam, you need to renew your mind.
Yeah.
Romans chapter 12, verse 2.
Okay.
I needed to renew my mind. I needed to think about things differently now. The truth of God now had to permeate. I had to learn that in Genesis chapter 2, God said He created Adam and Eve, and He created them perfect, and they were good.
Yeah.
And so I needed to learn that God values our bodies, and we should value our own bodies. Hebrews chapter 10, verse 5, God prepared a body for Jesus. So John 1:14, He came and he was flesh. He came in the flesh. So the body is important to God. Jesus Christ was beaten. He was spit upon. He was all these things. He felt what we have felt.
Yeah.
He is called our high priest in Hebrews.
Yeah.
And He feels the same things that we felt when He went through what He went through on the cross, where He cried out. We are the ones who are supposed to come to this high priest who knows how we feel.
Yeah.
And we should value our bodies as He values.
Yeah,
us.
that is so true. That is so true. Our dear listener, our time is up, but we are continuing.